So we're sitting here with Mr. Gavin Dantez. Welcome.
What is up, my brother? I've been super looking forward to this last month since you asked me to come on. And I want to say too to anybody listening, it's like you are one of those guys who's inspired me over the years a lot.
Appreciate it.
Because you have this ability to say what you feel, to test all sorts of different types of modalities of life, and to just express exactly who you are. And this is something I have learned a lot from you, so I want to just honor you for that.
Thank you. That was a nice surprise.
and I still haven't come out to one of your comedy nights, but I've seen a lot of clips of it.
It's all good, man. I'm going to do some more soon. Well, we could talk about that later, I guess. But yeah, I want to bring you on and talk about, the things I love about you is that you're very strong in your values as a man, and what a man should be in this day and age, especially with all the shit going on in the world. And you're very clued up on what's happening in the world. And your story, your personal story from knowing you for a few years of how you've evolved as a man in yourself, right? Like you came from the marketing world, did e-commerce, crushed it in that, learned about copywriting, psychology, and then now you're doing a hedge fund, which is amazing. Like it's blown my mind, like really. And so I wanted to get into all of these different topics, and I know you're really passionate about the Matrix as well. So it's going to be a very insightful chat for the next hour and a half. So I just wanted to bring you on and acknowledge you for all the good that you're doing in the world, man.
Man, thank you so much. Yeah. And it's funny to hear those things, especially if you just look back to high school or something. And I was exact opposite of that. D student, felt like a complete black sheep. Had no idea about entrepreneurship because my family was not entrepreneurial at all. And if I look at the 16personalities.com type of personality types, I was the only one who was intuitive in the family. So I could kind of see the future and feel like things were a little bit off, where everyone else was very sensory, very in the moment, very academic, kind of follow the system type of mentality. So that created a lot of friction in my life, because I always felt there was something wrong with everything, but I didn't have any outlet to understand what it was. And it wasn't like we had YouTube back then. So you just kind of went through asking questions. Why do I feel off? Why don't I fit in school? Why don't I have any motivation to do this? Why do I just want to go do my own thing? It's very strange. So it's always interesting to hear those things now because of the last years of focusing on personal development in every area of my life and learning from mentors who have built $1 million, billion-dollar businesses, learning from people who get in incredible shape, who biohack, who do the things that you do. In all these different skill sets and ways that high performers are able to just separate themselves from that average mentality of just doing what everybody else does and finding that magnetic middle, and just having the same beliefs, same mentalities, and just watching people do that and then learning from those people and seeing how fast things can evolve.
Yeah. And that's actually, as you're saying that's what fascinates me about you, because what you're saying about I didn't even know about your school days, but I have a similar experience at school where I just felt like, fuck, I'm in the wrong place. Like this ain't, if this is all there is in life, I'm a fucking failure.
100%. That's how it felt.
So then what was the epiphany for you where you were like, wow, you talk about the Matrix, but I'm curious, from where you were at school, when you're thinking, this is not for me, what was the epiphany that made you give you hope for life?
Oh man, it's such a cool question actually, because there's so many things, but I remember throughout school, and there was one time, I think it was third grade, and I was in French class, and everybody was saying 1 to 100 in French. And we got to 60. And I kept saying, 60, 61, 62, And everybody else skipped to 70. And I kept going to 67 or something. And I realized everyone else and it kept getting more and more awkward to not be like everybody else. And then my teacher was kind of keep going, because they saw that I was doing it right. But I was too insecure to not keep going. But I'd noticed while it was happening that really everybody thought they were doing it right. It wasn't like they were just doing it to follow each other. It's like they really just found that exact magnetic middle of I don't want to stand out. So their brain almost just switched and was like, I just have to be like everybody else. And I had all these moments of that, and I never knew what it was. Why do humans just act and behave like each other? Why are they so scared to stand out? Why is it that people are more scared of public speaking than dying, when people are surveyed. It's like these things always kept coming up in my mind. There was always something in my brain, no matter how fucked up things were, no matter how bad my grades were, no matter how much drugs I was selling for like years and years in high school and after, that's what I was doing. There was always something in my mind that said, there's something wrong, I'm gonna figure it out. There's something wrong with this world, but there's something inside of me that is gonna do something. And I never knew what it was or what it would look like, but I had this like desire for freedom, and I knew I could figure it out. And at one point, I found one audio program, and I was painting houses at the time as a career. And it was a program on fitness. And instead of listening to music or just doing nothing during the day, I put this audio in my ear. And I remember like a moment saying, man, if I can just find better information to put in my brain, like there's no chance that I can't like figure something out. And that was just a little thing at one point that triggered something, but that really did, for later on in my life, set me on such a different path, realizing that you have this supercomputer brain, and if you put the bad software in it, you get bad actions and behaviors. If you put good software in, then you start programming to take good actions and do good behaviors. It's such an obvious, simple concept, but I don't think it's thought about very often.
Mm. And so you started programming yourself with positive information, like from what kind of sources? What did you first start listening to?
When this first happened, that was just the first awakening to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I met a mentor in fitness that things changed. So a year before I had met this guy, he had just gotten out of prison, and I was still selling like some drugs at the time, and that's what he was in prison for, and guns. And we were at this party, and he started feeding me these tequila shots. And I got so drunk, I blacked out, I freaked out on everyone. I don't even remember. And I've only ever blacked out a couple times on alcohol. And it was super embarrassing. And it was about 9 months later, I was walking down my street, and I was like, I just smoked some weed. And this guy was hitting things with sledgehammers, flipping tires, just like randomly. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then he turned around, it was the same guy. And he's like, how are you doing? Whatever. And he's like, you want to train? And I was in jeans, and I was like, kind of like, fuck it. What do I have to lose? And before that, I had actually had a near-death experience, which had triggered some thoughts, but we can go into that after. So I trained for like 30 minutes with this guy. And for men, one of the biggest things that causes us to take the actions that we take or do what we do is our male influence, the men we have around us. So if men grow up with a father who is not a good fatherly figure, they go out in the streets to find a fatherly figure, or friends or whatever. If they get raised with good values and a good father and a good mentor, it's different, and throughout almost all of human existence, men have been mentored. There was never an assembly line education system where it was like 1 to 30 people, and sometimes it's a female mentor, a male mentor, someone who doesn't care about their job, does care, whatever. It's random. Back in the day, it's like you had a mentor, and then you would have to go through rites of passage, and you would want to become like that person, and you want to reach a certain level. It was like looked at as something that you want to do, and nowadays it's like people are getting rewarded for just lazy behavior, which is kind of weird. But I met this guy, and after that, he started to become my mentor. He saw like a fire in me. He saw what I was doing. He saw that he could stop me from being like how he was. So I started getting training from him every, twice a week, and eventually ended up becoming and getting certified as a personal trainer so I could work for him. And it was such a good moment in my life because it made me realize that you can work for something. You can decide you want something, and you can go out there and you can make it happen, which is a beautiful epiphany moment to have. You can set a goal and you can achieve it. While I was there, I met another guy who just saw something in me, but I didn't know at the time that he was a network marketer, But we became friends, and then he took me to one of these meetings and sold me the dream,
Yeah.
And at the time, I knew nothing about any of this stuff. I thought that was the only network marketing company in the world, That's how much I knew. So I signed up on the spot, started wearing suits, started just like recruiting people. I thought this was it, And this guy handed me a hard drive of Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, and I became fucking obsessed. like obsessed every day, 8 hours at least, you know?
Wow.
Like no matter what I was doing, working out, I couldn't stop listening to this stuff because everything that I had gone through in my life and felt like was wrong with the world, these guys were explaining to me how I felt. So I finally started to know myself, like, wait, I'm not so fucked up. Wait, I'm not, other people think like this. Wow, all these guys also are succeeding with that mentality. Wait, I was told if I don't go to university, I'm gonna be a failure.
Right.
Oh shit, you know, epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. Then I would use some of the techniques or things that I learned and they would work. And I'm like, holy shit. And then I ended up finding this guy on YouTube, Cesar Rodriguez, who I'm gonna have a call with again soon. What a legendary dude. He had this YouTube channel teaching sales, teaching marketing, and he also was sharing stuff about internet marketing. But what was so cool about this guy is he was super good with NLP and understood all of these different techniques, but he was really good at sharing you, do this step by step by step. So I took his system or whatever, and I went to the mall, all suited up with an iPad, and I would walk in and out of stores, and I would be like, who's the best salesperson here? You know? And they'd be like, me, because salespeople are competitive, right?
Yeah.
So he knew the psychology of salespeople. So, me. So they'd fight for my attention. And then I'd pick one and be like, you, over here. You know, I'd walk them over, and I had this authoritative positioning. And then I would sell them on the appointment, and then I'd be like, you're the type of person who's good with keeping appointments, right? So I had identity commitment. You know? And they'd be like, yeah, I never miss appointments. 9 out of 10 people would show up out of cold leads, you know, walking in. And at the time, I thought what I was doing was normal. I'm like, oh, this is what people do. Not realizing, because it happened like 3 days later, I walked into a store and I did the same thing. And this guy was like, get the fuck out of my store. You're trying to steal my salespeople, you piece of shit. Like, oh fuck, I'm doing something wrong, you know?
Yeah.
But it goes to show if you don't know that you're doing something wrong and you're just told, you'll just do it. How much of our success is held back by thinking about what might bad happen, you know? And if we could shed that, man, we could take so much action. It's ridiculous. But I remember walking into my place after the first day of doing this, and I was like, man, I was so euphoric. I'm like, I know I'm going to be successful. I know it. Because if I can figure out 100 of these different things, of human psychology, of this, blah, 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 and I can use it and I can become that knowledge. It's impossible. It's inevitable. It's like the laws of nature. It's like, doesn't matter if you believe in gravity or not, it works. I really believe that the principles of how you achieve something are like that. Doesn't matter if you believe in them or not, they will work, you know? So that's really what happened with the audiobooks. They changed the way my brain operated.
So you were upgrading your software through the audiobooks on a daily basis, and it's the compound interest of that over time, right?
Yes, and how my brain works, so I'm the INTP personality, and I do a lot of different personality tests and try to figure this stuff out, which would be like Neo in the Matrix. So my brain is always connecting dots. So for me, my best way of learning is listening or conversation. And it can also be doing, but listening allows my brain to have a conversation with the person as I'm listening. So as I'm hearing the information, I'm asking myself, how can I apply that? How does that connect with this? And it's happening automatically. You know, that's just how my brain works. Some people, when they're thinking about something, they're thinking about it as like a stream of consciousness, like sensory, just right there. And those are very easily suggestible people in hypnosis because they will listen to those repeating words. My brain is always questioning those words, so it's very hard for me to get into that state because I'm like, what am I doing here? And I'm having like a conversation with 3 people in my head from different perspectives. You see what I'm saying? But when you know that and you know how you learn, that can be a superpower. And I started to realize, wow, I'm really good at learning this stuff, but also then I could go to someone else and I can explain it in a way where they would have an epiphany and get it.
Yeah.
Not in a way where it would just go over their head. Like I could see that moment where their eyes would light up. Oh, I get it, you know? So I could take a complex subject and make it simple. And I started to realize this, and I would think, well, that's normal at that time.
Yeah.
Can everybody do this? But no, everybody has a certain superpower in life, in a way that they can do things better than others. And it's like the Einstein quote, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will grow up its whole life believing it's stupid, you know? And everybody's a genius at some level, and you have to find that.
So how do people find that? Because that's the $1 million question, right?
Absolutely. In Stratmont Brothers, one of the things that I do with every employee is I put them through multiple personality types tests, multiple strength tests, and then I take all of that information and I converge it together and I decode them as a human being so I can pull out their strengths and pull out their superpowers. And this is something that is not done at all in school, which is insane.
Yeah.
It's the most disappointing thing about the education system, that everybody's treated the same and taught in the same way, when they all learn different ways, have different skills, have different ways that they can pull out those strengths, but they're all taught the same way. And then some people do great in that system, and then some people don't. And most of the people who do great in that system are also great at working within the system. You know, so it's like it's a cycle that goes on.
So what are those tests, just for people watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them is the 16 personalities. There's Strength Finders 2.0 by Gallup. This will give you your top 5 strengths. There is Principles U by Ray Dalio. This teaches you how to pull out your best strengths within an organization. There's Hexaco that will go over your called the Big 5, and these are like inherent traits within you. One of them is conscientiousness, and this is the trait that is most related to like high levels of like material achievement in life. So conscientiousness is organization, perfectionism, diligence, and prudence. So diligence, hard work; prudence, your ability to make good decisions. So of course, if someone's very organized, perfectionist, so they do things right, hard worker, and they make better decisions, of course they're going to have a higher chance of success. But a lot of entrepreneurs aren't that high in conscientiousness. They're very creative, and they need to hire the people who are super high in conscientiousness, or else they can't make their dreams a reality because they're too all over the place. But it's so good to know these things. So if I know this about my team, or what their strengths are or gifts are, well, then I'm going to get them in roles that are much better for them. So if they're a much better communicator and much better at seeing things that others don't see, they're going to be more in that managerial role, helping people see things better and becoming more effective. If there's somebody who puts their head down and is a hard worker and great at their one skill, and they just need deadlines, and they just love to just knock stuff off their checklist, then I need them in that position. I can't have everybody working the same. But by knowing this about someone and being able to pull it out, number one, it's better for your company. Number two, it's better for them because they're happier. Everybody wins, you know? And it's better for your mission.
Yeah. So that's your superpower. Not everyone can do that.
No.
What you do.
I have a very interesting role because I have so many different things that I do.
Yep.
From creating masterclasses and content, from writing copy, from connecting departments and making sure everybody's working together. There's all sorts of stuff that I'm doing, and it's similar to how sometimes Elon Musk is talking about it. He'll do what's necessary, you know, and he'll get in each department because he's tried to learn and study so much so he can always be there, and whatever is needed most in the business to elevate it, he's going to be there. That doesn't mean I'm great with everything. Organization, I'm not that good at. There's many things that I'm not good at, but that's why I have people who are great at those things.
But you had that extreme self-awareness because it's hard for people, well, speaking from experience, like it's taken me a long time to figure out, all right, what am I good at? Like, it's always, I feel like always a work in progress. It's like, all right, I'm good at this thing, but I'm also good at this thing too, but I'm really shit at that. Like, and I get more clarity as I go through life. So do you feel like that too?
This is, if anyone ever gives you dogmatic answers like I get myself, like it's just lying to themselves. There's the book by Peter Drucker, who's one of the greatest managers of all time, called Managing Oneself. And it's just like a 30-page book, and it's one of the most important books to read, like on the top of the list, because it gives you that. And it goes through different questions like, how do you perform? How do you work with others? How can you contribute? You know, and these 5 questions, you're supposed to constantly ask yourself forever. It never ends. You think about it and you try to like get what those skills are and you try to act those out. And then every single week you look back and say, am I actually good at that? You know, because most of the time when we think we're good at something, we're not. You know, maybe we got good at it because we did it more than other things, but that doesn't mean that that's the thing we could like thrive at the most. So when you look back at it, you're just constant in an optimization process. You do reflect, do reflect, do reflect, and then you try to look at it from as many perspectives as possible. You try to try things from different perspectives, and that's what wisdom is. You have like data, which is just ones and zeros. You have information. Information is something that informs you of what that data is, on how to get a goal or something. Then you have knowledge, and knowledge is like organized information, like a body of information. And then you have experience, which is taking that knowledge and then doing something with it, and then now you have experience. And then you have wisdom, which is experience from many different perspectives. So that's why travelers have so much wisdom a lot of time, because they've been to the countries. They're not just watching the news and hear that country's a terrorist country. It's like, no, I've been there. They took me into their house. They gave me dinner. Like, you know, They have more wisdom about the world because they've seen it from all different perspectives. For example, someone like Hanalei, who grew up her whole life traveling with her parents. She's seen all these different countries. She's watched her parents speak on all these stages. She's met so many people from different cultures. Yeah, so she has much more wisdom for a young 13-year-old. Now I think she's 14. But so much wisdom.
Yeah, so much.
An amazing amount of wisdom. And it's like when I speak to her, I feel like I'm speaking to a 30-year-old. You know?
Same. I feel like that too. I feel like speaking to like a 4-year-old woman.
Yeah.
She's got so much wisdom.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And this is what's so sad about the education for children, is that they are trained to be limited. You know, one of my things that I say is we're all born limitless, but the limits are conditioned into us.
Oh, amen to that. So true.
So born with this, like, it's not a blank slate. We have evolutionary psychology.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, making us prone to survival and sex and social status. And, you know, these things are wired into us to some level. But the conditioning from the outside of what's wrong, what's right, of what you can achieve, what you can't achieve, of how the system works, that's the matrix. Like, the matrix is the world pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth of the natural order of things. You know, so humans believe in things that are not necessarily true within the universe.
What when you watched The Matrix for the first time? Like, we're going to get into it, but I'm just curious, what was going through your mind when you watched it for the first time?
I don't think when I first watched it, I had very many epiphany moments. I think for sure, I just thought kind of like maybe this information is kind of normal to know or something like this, but I knew I saw it at such a surface level back then, because I watched it when I was so much younger. I don't know, when I was 12 or 13 or something. What is it? I don't know exact year, but yeah, I don't think I had that feeling from that information back then. But as soon as I saw different layers of like occult speakers or people who are like revealing hidden wisdom, speaking about the Matrix and like the allegory of it, it was like an opening up a door into a whole new universe. And yeah, if you've heard of the book called Simulacra and Simulation by John Baudrillard, this was where the Matrix came from. And it was a book talking about how we see the map but not the territory. We actually like look at the globe and we think that the lines are real, you know? We think that all of these like things that have been like a mental prison put into us are real. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with countries, or it's just the fact that we believe in the authority that tells us that it's true. And then we don't see anything past it. So in the Matrix, Neo represents the neocortex, you know, the higher thinking brain. Morpheus represents the truth of reality, and Trinity represents the sacred feminine, or the heart. So the whole movie is about aligning the higher thinking with the heart and truth, you know, that trivium. And if you can align those three things, you can have power. You can have free will, free choice, at a very powerful way. So this movie, when I started to decode these allegories and see, oh man, it's true. Like, we are batteries for this current system. We are just feeding it our unconscious energy. And the machines represent just like machine consciousness, which is just cold, no empathy. Get what I want energy, you know? Set up systems, everyone and humans are just exposable. They just need to get me to my goal. So I want to keep them less understanding of what's going on so I can get what I want at the expense of their energy. Battery for the system. So Neo was that representation of breaking free from that, or Thomas Anderson was that everyday man, and Neo was that new version of yourself that you can be. And then the agents were the representation of default programs. So the system tells us what to do, tells us what to think. The agents are anybody who believes in it that tells you should believe in it. And that's why they always woke up as somebody else. Anyone around you can, wait, you're talking about a conspiracy? What, and then they attack you, you know? So an agent is just default program. And if you're not in the default program and you're breaking free from that, they want to get you back in. So if you remember that scene where Neo is being interrogated, they're like, okay, we need you to help us find Morpheus because he's a terrorist, you know? The truth is a terrorist. If you see what's happening right now, freedom, it's all terrorism, it's all Nazis, truth is a Nazi now. So if you think about it from this perspective, he says, okay, interesting. After like Neo says, fuck you, I'm not going to give you the information. This is interesting. What are you going to do if you can't make the phone call with your speech? And then they close his mouth. That's right. Remember? Yeah. And this is, again, it's a representation. It's the same thing with cloth masks. Like, people know the cloth mask itself isn't going to do anything. Yeah, sure, if you have a N95 mask and you're putting you know, there are levels of safety you can do and all sorts of things. But for someone to think that a cloth mask that has like giant holes is like doing a lot versus an N95, and then getting mad at you even though they're wearing something that has no, you know, so it's black or white.
Yeah.
So it shows it's a level of compliance that is being looked for. And if you see what's happened with police, with anybody in these government positions, they've been fired if they don't comply. What does that mean? Well, now you have a bunch of bad people who are complying, who will do anything at the whims of the state, which makes a very dangerous system for anyone who wants freedom. Because if it's the police, if it's the army, if it's the doctors, and everybody who doesn't want to get the thing or doesn't want to comply is out of that system, then everybody within the system will force everything. It's a very ingenious process, to be honest, but it's very scary at the same time. So when people are breaking free from this matrix and seeing what's possible, they start to ask lots of questions. And the more questions you ask, the more you find. The deeper down the rabbit hole you go. And then the gap between the default programs and you becomes more and more, which then makes you even more of a terrorist to them. You know, we can go deeper into it for sure.
What's your favorite scene in The Matrix? I'm just curious.
It's when Neo first wakes up. So he's in the pod, they bring him on, he sees like, oh, everybody's feeding their energy, you know, you can't believe it. And then they shoot him out, and he wakes up, and Morpheus is there, and he says, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus says, because you've never used them before. Meaning you've never seen reality for what it is. And we've all seen it, I've gone through it. When you're waking up to like some of the harsh realities of life, it's super painful. You know, and your brain has to finally think for itself because it's never done that. That doesn't mean you haven't been able to do mathematical calculations or do conscious decisions. It means you've never thought outside of what you've been told. And when that starts to happen and you start to, it's like, oh my God, you have to question now your whole life. And that cognitive dissonance is so painful that most people want to go back into ignorance. Ignorance is like you ignore the facts, you know? And if you're ignoring it, you can do that for a long time and live in like bliss. But for anybody who has really seen it and can't stand that, they won't be able to go there. But some people, it's too painful to look at the harsh realities of life that they will just accept the other. And that's why I love that scene. It's so damn powerful. It's like, you've never used your mind for what it's capable of, ever. Your whole life. You've been a pod, feeding the system your energy. And now you can see. Crazy.
What do you think it takes for people to have that epiphany in their own life?
Pain, mainly. So I think it's different for some people. I think some people are more a bit able to go through it. You know, different personality types are much more prone to this type of thinking that we're talking about, and others aren't. In adults, it's pain. Like, this has been studied in so much evolutionary psychology and trying to figure it out. The pain of remaining the same has to become greater than the pain of change. So with habits, for example, we're going to talk about, people can be told by their doctor, you're going to die tomorrow if you don't quit smoking. And then they leave the doctor's office and they light another cigarette, you know? And it's like, people say it's too hard to quit smoking. And this is fascinating because they're actually saying, what they're saying logically is it's hard to not put this in my mouth. Like, that's very easy. But what they mean is there are subconscious triggers and emotional things that I'm going through unconsciously that keep causing me to do this without me being able to have any willpower. That's really what they're saying, because the act is easy. It would be like saying, like, it's really hard to, like, pick up that glass. Like, no, you just pick it up, you know? With the cigarettes, you just don't put it in your mouth. With losing weight, it's like you eat less and you move more, you know? Like, there's, like, some really simple principles to a lot of stuff. And, of course, you can get more detailed. Yeah. But overall, like, these things are not complicated. What's causing us as humans to not be able to do the things? So usually it's comfort. Like, comfort is a killer of dreams. Imagine you have all of this potential, but your human psychology is telling you to just lie on the couch. When somebody goes into the grocery store, man, like, it's a death trap. If you're not, like, how you've trained yourself with your willpower, if you haven't done that, man, like, that whole place is designed to make you eat all sorts of stuff that make your taste buds go nuts and store fat so you can survive, you know? It's primal. So your primal side is like, eat more, get more, you know? Keep going. You're going to survive, bro, you know? That's what your primal self is saying. But your primal self is a liar, because we're living in the modern world where we don't have to hunt tomorrow and get a kill for the next 2 weeks. It's right there. So now it's the opposite. Success in this day and age is counterintuitive to what it was when we evolved. You have to do the opposite. So that means you have to train your intuitive feeling to change. It's the only way. Or else the intuitive feeling is going to say, eat the bad thing. It's going to say, like, have sex with anybody at any time. You know, like, all these primal feelings are going to come up. But you have to ask yourself in that situation, yeah, how can I make myself, in my own mind, the pain of remaining the same be greater than the pain of change? How do you do that? One of the best ways is to start getting, like, incredibly big dreams, things that are, like, so painful to not have. How can you make your why so strong for helping your family and the world and those around you? How can you make the pain of not achieving and helping the world more painful than taking the action to lift the weights? You know? Because if it's not, if the pain, then you'll go to comfort. Much easier to do the Netflix. Much easier to watch the you know, whatever series and just tune out and live vicariously through somebody else's life. And that's how you're wired. So the wiring is telling you to do that. It's not your fault. But that's where you have to, like, shift it. And one thing at a time. But without that, like, level of seeing these two different versions of yourself and the pain you're going to be in on your deathbed of regret because you didn't achieve anything, you didn't do anything, and you just sat there living somebody else's life, watching somebody else's life. If you can't, like, imagine the pain of that on a regular basis, so you put yourself into action until you're at the point where it's just naturally you, then it's going to be hard.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about what motivates me, and my fear is, I've heard this a lot, and I started thinking about it. I was like, actually, that's I believe that. Like, my fear is meeting the Aaron that I dream about, and the Aaron that watches Netflix. I don't want to be the Aaron that watches Netflix and meet the Aaron that I could have been. Because that would just crush me. That would just destroy me. Yeah. What is it for you? What's your motivation?
Yeah, so many different things. I love this example. And to me, like, I work way harder than I ever worked before, and I love it now, you know? I remember when I was just trying to break free from working a dishwashing job or a painting houses job or at a pizza shop or anything, thinking if I don't go to university, I'm going to be a failure. And I remember, like, those times. And then I remember the times where starting to learn the information and then just, like, wanting freedom, you know, selfish freedom. Like, I want to be able to travel, do what I want, where I want, with who I want, whenever I want, however much I want. Like, that's really the selfish part of success. How do I just get more money so I can have a better lifestyle? And this comes from ego, and it comes from proving others that you can do it. And there's a level of something inside of you that didn't feel enough, you know? So you're trying to get there. And then as I start learning more and more, and I start to realize, wow, I'm doing these things for the wrong reason. And I'm only working hard because I'm trying to get something, not for the character that I want to develop, not for like who I want to feel like on a regular basis, not for the respect and the proud feeling I want to have about myself, because every day I'm in my own head. So I don't no longer want to meet that person in the future. I want to have the conversation with them every day. You know, I want to get up in the morning and do the run, not because it's something that I want to like say, hey, look how I did this. I want to like be on that run and be like, fuck yeah. Like, you got up and did this. You went to bed early. You're really focused. Like, I respect you. I want to have that feeling, you know? So I don't want to not respect myself because I can't control myself. And I'm just not, I'm not as interested in just the bullshit anymore. Like the party stuff, the this, that, it's really like, it's not interesting to me. Because I know when I'm there, I'm going to be feeling that. But that doesn't mean you can't do things sometimes, or can't eat food that tastes great sometimes, or blah, blah, blah. Like, I still eat food that I love every day. But I don't want to have most of the time my life be around pleasure and just things that will make me feel good in the moment and instant gratification. I want to do things in the moment that make me respect myself, that I know long term are going to get me way better results. I love like the David Goggins mindset with this, like, be uncommon amongst uncommon men. You know, at first you're trying to just be uncommon and just get your goals and live out in Bali and, you know, have a business that's doing 7 figures or this, that, and you're like, oh, that's cool. But that's just uncommon, you know? But be uncommon amongst uncommon men is a whole different game. That takes a whole other level of discipline, leadership, helping others, putting your time into what you can do to make the world better in any way you can, trying to decode reality and wake as many people up as possible. There's not enough time in the day, you know? And that's a beautiful feeling when you go to bed, realize, wow, I wish I could like have more day left. You know? But you still emptied yourself, like in David Data says in The Way of the Superior Man. Every day, empty yourself. Like, give yourself to the world. That means you have to be present. But to be present, you would have already had to set up things into the future. It's a juxtaposition in a way where there's like the book, The Power of Now. You want to be present, but how are you going to be present if you're just focused on trying to pay your bills, you know? Like, you're going to be in stress all the time. So on one side, you have to have the philosophy of the samurai warrior, think into the future and plan and strategize. And the other side, you have to be super focused and in flow state in the moment. It's like those two things can work together. And I think that's like, I think that's such a beautiful state to be, especially as a man, because like I have this book from my friend Stefan Arnio, who died in 2019. He wrote this book in 7 days, 600 pages, after he did a water fast in I believe in Costa Rica or in Mexico. And he came back and he just flowed out the words. But in this book, Hard Times Create Strong Men, he makes such a good case for what it is to be a man in money, sex, religion, and politics. And I love the mentality of a man becoming strong emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I think that's such a beautiful way of seeing it. Like, how can you have emotional resolve? How can you be a philosopher and a scientist mentality? How can you have a strong physical body? How can you have a connection with something greater than yourself? And how can you work on that every day? And not to the point where you can just like show off, but you're in the work, in the mastery, in the purpose, living your life like that every day. So by the end of each night, you're not looking up being like, man, I wish I should have done something more, or having these regrets. You're just like, you emptied yourself. And I think men, they yearn for that, but they've been trained through like this YOLO mentality, you only live once, that's about pleasure and like living it up in the moment right now, instant gratification wise, and they lose and sell their fulfillment for that.
Man, this is so cool that we're talking about this, because this is something that I geek out on a lot and I think about a lot, because I'm like, I've been the guy that has settled. Like, I've been in relationships with women, and I love that you bring up David Dieter in this book as well, because I'm like, man, my fear is to settle. Like, that's actually one of my biggest issues with women, is that I feel like, I don't know. I think there's a woman out there for me, but every woman I've been with, like, I've been settling, and I don't like who I am when I'm settling.
Yeah.
You know? How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Your experiences with women, and you know, just settling for average and not liking who you are when you're, you know, it's no fault of their own. They want security, of course. That's what they're optimizing for. Men are focused on their mission, but it's like, how can the two coexist?
It's too difficult of a question, because it's also such a personal thing. And I respect a man who is just who they are, you know? And men only respect themselves if they're just who they are. And women only accept men who are who they are, but who are striving to be better, you know? It's like there's that quote, men chase championships and women chase champions, you know? And I believe in that, because you see it everywhere.
So true.
Right? A man who's on his mission, who's becoming better every day, who has respect from other men, is who women want to be with. And that type of man in a relationship is fucking busy all the time. And they're crushing life in all sorts of ways. And it's impossible for them to be constantly given attention from that man. But would they trade that in, you know? It's like most women wouldn't. Most women want to know their man is on their mission, and they want to take care of the child, and they want, when the father comes home, even if they don't spend that much time with them, they're a role model for the child, you know, of what you can be and achieve in life, and the life you can create. And there's a big missing element in today's society about like stay-at-home dads, or you have to be around all the time. It's like, it's a really weird thing, man. Men used to be in war, off to battle, like for all of human existence. This is more what it was like, and women were taking care of the children. And then when the men reached a certain age, they would come out with the men, and the men would teach them to hunt and teach them to go to war and all of this. And this is how it went for all of human existence. And now we're like shifting that, and now the men don't respect their fathers anymore. So then they go try to find other men, and those men sometimes are gangsters or people on the street, and men who are doing more of the things from that perspective. But there's less and less like male role models. So for me, the number one thing is keeping your truth and being on your mission, and I just believe that there's a level of attraction, because a lot of men don't realize this, but at about 35 is when you start to get more attractive, you know? When I was in my young 20s, man, when I lost a relationship, I thought my world was over.
Me too.
You know? and that was at the point where women didn't respect me at all, you know?
Yep.
So men, I wish they could realize this when they're younger, man. Like, that's the time to work on your stuff. That's not the time to be just chasing girls around all the time. It's a time to reach mastery and like focus and resist a lot of that. Because once you get to 30, that's when you start to peak, you know?
Yep.
And that's also how I realize it with us, is I think a lot of men are thinking, oh, I don't have a man. I know a lot of men by 50 is when they get into their best relationships, you know? So like there is no like time, it's not the same type of timeline. I just think the focus on yourself and becoming better, and then eventually attracting that woman who also you can push you, can keep the adventure, can whatever, keep up with you, because I believe it's for sure possible. You know, there are definitely women that are at that level. It's just harder to find. It's a smaller pool, so to speak.
Yeah, so this book, Hard Times Create Strong Men, I just love that title.
Yeah.
What does that title mean to you? Hard Times Create Strong Men.
So there's the quote, and it's hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And it's an 80-year cycle. And it's been studied throughout history. And it's because it's a generational cycle. So by the time the 80 years has come up, the whole last generations are gone, right? So that's why history repeats itself. It repeats itself psychologically within human nature. How many people do you believe have studied history, you know, and the patterns of history? Almost nobody. So if nobody actually knows it, even though we know what happened in the Holocaust, but nobody knows all the causal factors that led up to it. So we're seeing similar things happening right now, but people are completely unaware of it because they have no idea what the history is. But the history repeats itself because it's human nature. So when there's hard times, you have to be strong to survive. It's the only way. When times are easy, You don't have to, you can be lazy. So then people get weak. It's super simple. It's like, this is why we put ourselves through hard things. This is why you do jiu-jitsu. You put yourself through things, hard times on purpose so you don't become weak.
Yep.
You do that because you know how you feel when you're weak. But human nature doesn't care if somebody hasn't figured that out yet. It's just, if you don't put resistance on the muscle, it gets weak. You know, the mind is the same. The emotions are the same. And now in this political landscape, and you can see it, we are in the good times or the weak men create hard times part of the cycle. Look at this last 20 years. People have spent more time on Netflix, eating shitty food, focus on YOLO, you know, partying, because times were good for a while, and then we got into this point. That's the best time to create like psychological warfare on humanity, because they're at their weakest. Men are the most effeminate in the Western world in the last 80 years. So is that not the best time to tell you to comply? To set up all new systems and censorship and get everybody to like follow the same agenda, from tracking to putting things. The fact that we're in a point in history where men are not fighting when we are being forced to put something in our fucking body, that is like, and I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I was that weak. Like, this is like, if I had that level of cowardice to think that a little child should be forced to put something in their body that's experimental, I would go crazy. You know, like that, if that was my child, like, that's insane to me.
Yeah, it's like it's a fear of standing up for what you believe in, right? Like that's what it is, really. I think it's like I've met so many guys who they don't agree with it, but they just go along with it anyway.
Yeah,
it's purely out of fear.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of those people are really good people, you know, like really nice people, I would say. I don't like to say good. Nice. They're very nice people. They don't like to ruffle feathers. They want people to feel good. Sometimes making a man feel good is the most horrible thing you can do to him, because he's going to keep being that person, you know? Like what we do in Habit Accelerator, which is our program for men, is we're like militant style, like Navy SEAL, like accountability. And if the man says they want to achieve this thing and they give us permission to whoop their ass, amazing, you know, because they're going to actually get there, and then they're going to be super proud of themselves. So if we have to like call them out and make them feel bad in the short term so they feel great in the long term, was that mean or was that nice? It's hard to, you know, there's nuance in these things. And in reality right now, we're going through this time where the virtue is about being nice and about not ruffling feathers and treating everybody a certain way, to the point where people are being celebrated for being 300 pounds overweight, instead of saying you are going to cause yourself more depression, more sadness, more lack of energy, more death, more chance of disease. How are we not allowed to say that stuff anymore? Like, we're not allowed to say the thing that's going to hurt their feelings in the short term to help them in the long term. That's fucking horrible. That's like that's the rude thing. That you were not able to go through that confrontation to help somebody get better. I'm not saying people have to run around like saying you're a piece of shit, you fat fuck or something like this, you know? It's more, how can you just realize that the thing that they're currently doing is not good for them, you know? And especially if they're saying things like, man, I'm depressed, I have anxiety. And now there's, oh yeah, you need to go to the doctor and get antidepressants. Not you need to get in the fucking gym. Like, how many people are taking antidepressants right now and their doctors never once said, here's the type of food you could try eating, try to get around good people who are going to make you strive to be better, try to get a meditation practice or something that's, you know, none of this exists. No, here's your pill. They tried to do it to me. Like, it was a 15-minute meeting, tried to give me antidepressants.
Really?
It's crazy.
Wow.
When I was younger, I thought I was depressed. And I was, because I had the feeling of being down. But the feeling of being down is not like a chemical imbalance. It's a lifestyle. It's what I got myself to. It was a downward spiral that I got to that could be reversed.
Yeah, cause and effect. the causes that you did that got you to that place.
Yeah. And it got deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is the harsh part about reality is when somebody's succeeding, they can't stop success. It comes from all angles. When somebody's not succeeding, they get beaten down from all angles. And I'm fucking happy I've gone through that a bunch of times. Just got my ass whooped, you know? What great times of life. I wish I had the mentality back then to realize how good those times were. Like I sometimes just hope for that, you know? I hope for big challenges to come in my life. Like, give me things that are going to increase my character. Right. So I have to do it right now a lot to force myself to get into hard times through boxing, through, you know, harder things. But imagine, like, being the type of person who, like, welcomes it. Those are the people who succeed at the highest levels because they're fucking driving so hard, like an Elon Musk, creating so many problems for himself to build something so amazing, so close to failure over and over.
So for you, when you had that, going back to that near-death experience, was that one of those moments where you were like fucking down on the ground?
This is a good, I'm glad, thank you for bringing that up. I was around, I think, 21, 22. I have a really poor memory when it comes down to my 20s before 25 because I was so off in life and smoking so much weed and that I didn't want to record things. I didn't want to take pictures, like, because I thought I was ugly, you know, like so I was really, a lot of my memories are not there from like specific dates or when they happened or documenting it. But what happened was I went out with some of my friends to the lake in Canada and we brought a bunch of alcohol, like beer bong, like all this stuff. We're getting super drunk. And then we went for a hike down this train track and there was this little cliff. And we started climbing up it. We're just going to climb up to the top. And it's probably 30 feet, you know, not like crazy high, but high enough. We climb up to the top. We're sitting on the edge. My friends are like, okay, let's go. They start walking around the other way. I was like, man, I'm going to walk down. So I scale down. So I start going. My foot slips. I flip completely upside down, like you're dead type of upside down. I never had my life flash before my eyes like people say, but it just slowed down for a second, like, and I will always remember the moment. And then my legs were up in the air. My arms had been caught by two like little branches sticking out of the side. And I was upside down. My friend was looking right at me like, and then I looked from side to side and there wasn't any other branches on the whole cliff. It was only exactly where both my shoulders got caught. So my shoulder was dislocated and I slowly got down. And I just remember asking questions at this time. I was like, man, this is heavy. I was like, what would my parents have said about me at my funeral? Like, man, he had so much potential. It's so sad that he just wastes, you know, never got to use it, you know? Oh, like heavy, like, man, what was I doing? And then another one was like, man, what am I really doing anything that I'm passionate about anymore? Like, am I putting any effort into life and like living like a life? Or am I just wasting away? And then the last was like, am I like contributing anything? Like, do I have anything, you know? And this didn't change my life instantly, but it was definitely a seed of like, I'm gonna change something up here. But yeah, man, that one question though, and just imagining how disrespectful it would have been to my family and God, that you're given this gift and then you do nothing with it. Like, yeah, no way.
Wow, I mean, unbelievable that you were saved by two branches.
Yeah. Many times in my life though now, like from bacteria infections to all sorts, but that was the moment of like, okay, something's watching me here.
Yeah.
And you can, like, I'm a realist.
Yeah.
It could be true, it could not be true.
Yeah.
But it's better to believe that it's true. So
why is it better for you?
It's better to believe that there's something that loves you, you know? Mm-hmm. That there's a force out there that thinks you're important, that thinks you're special or whatever. You don't have to believe it from a standpoint of that is the fact of reality, that there's special privilege on you. But why not have that as an empowering belief? Like if that's your empowering belief that gets you to achieve more because you believe no matter what you try to do in life, someone's going to have your back or something's going to be there, or you're going to figure it out. That's how I look at it. I just always look at it like I'm going to figure it out. So if I fail, it's okay. I'm going to figure it out. You know, if something bad happens, it's okay. I'm going to figure it out. Like I think that mentality, knowing and deeply having something inside you that knows that you're always going to be okay, is super powerful.
Absolutely. And that sometimes I get away from that. And
me too. Yeah.
You start suffering because of it, right? It's like when you get back to that, I'm going to figure it out, whatever it fucking takes. That's when you get your power back. But when you drift away from that, like for me, that's when I was like, oh, fuck. But I just want to get back to who I was, like that's, I'll figure it out, it's going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful state to be in. And, man, this is why with men and what we're doing with like the habit side of things is when a man just like starts to get that momentum, even if it's a little thing, it's fucking amazing to see. Like it could be one habit in a month that's small that just makes them realize that they have control of their life. Super powerful. I think it's Milton Erickson who... He was one of the greatest like conversational hypnotherapists. So he could hypnotize you while you were just like having the conversation. You implant all these subconscious programs. If a plane flew over, all was happening. It's like there's the plane flying to your destiny. Like he would, whatever it was, he would be able to be right in the moment. And someone came to him and was like, "How I can never lose weight. Everything I've ever tried." It's just impossible. It's impossible for me to lose weight. I did this diet, I did that diet. And then he was like, okay, I want you to do this one last diet. And he said, I want you to gain another 5 pounds this week. Please, go home, trust me on this, just gain 5 more pounds. I don't know the exact timeline actually, and then the guy finally came back and I was like, okay, I did it. I gained the weight. He's like, okay, you're cured. And the guy went and lost all the weight because he realized he was in control of his life. If he could do it that way, he could do it this way. It's like people think they're a victim to life. And as soon as that shifts and they realize that they're like the captain of their ship, that they can put what they want in their brain and they can act and behave differently, and this universe is bound by specific laws of cause and effect. Gravity works regardless whether you want it to or not. It's not against you. It doesn't care what skin color you are or anything. If you fall, you die, When you know that, okay, let me decode these laws. Let me find out how this thing works. And then let me get power within this reality. It's like, that's a beautiful moment to have. But sometimes you need to just get that little win for someone where they just have that awakening that, wow, if I can do it here, I can do it there.
Powerful. And I've seen that happen firsthand with clients in my health business. Like, they transform their health and now they're like, one guy, he was working a job and then he transformed his health and now he's a health coach. And it's like, holy shit, he's an entrepreneur now. Like he had that belief from transforming his body, and he's probably going to watch this too. Like it's amazing. Like shout out to Johnny. He's also Canadian. Yeah. And he's like living his dream life. He had a job before when I started coaching him. Amazing. Like to see that spark.
The spark, man. This is what I live for that.
Yeah.
And like with our program, it's only men because I just know how to
so talk
help
about
men,
that. So how did that come about? Like, what do you guys do? For the people watching.
Yeah, no, it's I love going through it. So my business partner, who at first was one of my clients, and I did some consulting with him because he took one of my courses, and he was actually like a world-class producer, incredible videography, like the stuff that he puts together. And he told me his story about his past and what he went through, and he was in some hard times, man. Like really, like business after business failing, like really at the deepest level of like when you're a man where you feel like fuck this, like at that level. And he shifted it around with habits, and it started simple. It started with him doing every morning at like 4:30 a.m. he went to his lake, that was by his way. Every single morning he went. And Whether it was ice cold in the winter or it was warm in the summer, it didn't matter. And he trained himself to increase his habits, like his daily behaviors. Because if you just think about it, like the compound effect, you can look at the moon all night, but you'll never see it move, but it's going fast. Habits are a lag time effect. This is why it's so hard for people to achieve things in life, is they can't see the instant return.
Yep.
You know? So they can't see how it's going to compound. So 10 days doesn't do anything. All you feel is pain. You only feel worse. You don't feel any better. So you have to create this escape velocity. So if with a rocket ship, you have like habit gravity almost. The gravity is holding back and 80% of the fuel gets burnt, and then it just glides along perfect. So 80% of your energy gets built up installing the habit. So then you can just have a lack of willpower and just do it automatically. But when you start to see that these like little habits over time like build up, you start to realize, holy shit, all of these self-development books, except for ones like this, but most of these self-development books or the law of attraction, they all do the same thing. They prey on instant gratification. They prey on imagine it and it's going to appear. They prey on speed, ease, and pleasure. This is what's hitting us from all angles. Whether it's fitness and a magic pill or a magic supplement, or it's books that say get rich now, or new courses coming out, how to build $1 million Shopify business in 5 minutes. Everything is about quick, easy, fast, go.
Yeah.
Get it. You want the thing without doing the thing. You want the lottery mentality, the luck mentality.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to prey on that. So we were like, fuck this, and we wanted to just reverse that, because there are men out there who know there's something wrong with that, who know that they actually want to feel like they did something in life. They want to become like the warrior for themselves, their family. They want to be the guy where if a family member dies, they're not just there as a victim, they're there supporting everybody. The one person that's strong enough to be able to take it and help everybody, the real men want that. They don't want speed, ease, and pleasure. There's nothing wrong with leverage and using automation and learning to use the tools of reality that will make you do a better job. But there is something wrong with trying to get things for nothing. And it was Warren Buffett who said, the world is not crazy enough place to reward enough undeserving people. It's getting there though. We're getting to the point where people who are doing nothing are getting rewarded for it. It's a little bit scary, but they're not fulfilled. They might be getting physical examples of what the success is, but real success is here. We all know this. Look at all the greatest movies of all time. Look at Rocky or anything. It's never winning the championship. It's who he became in the process. That's what we cry about at the end of a movie. We don't cry that he won it. Who cares? It's a fucking golden belt. It's look what he overcame. And then that look on the person's face gives me chills,
Yeah.
Because that's the truth. The truth is that overcoming who they became, that character, and then what they can now do in life because of that, who they can help because of that, who they can be a role model for, they can help rise up. Man, so yeah, we structured our 8-week program to put men through a hardcore accountability process to just get them in that mentality. So every week they go through a super cinematic, unbelievable piece of content, but then they get actually held accountable every step of the way. So our coaches hold them fucking accountable, and if they slack off for too long, we kick them out. So we put so much leverage against them not succeeding, so the pain of losing is greater than the pain of winning, right? And if you do this enough times, I think it's probably 1% of people who succeed in most courses. And with ours, we have 50% of people crushing it, because they have to. And it doesn't mean we accept everybody. We do have a qualification process, but still, if somebody is hungry, they have the will, man, it's the principles of life. This is why Navy SEALs become Navy SEALs. They have a drill sergeant, and they do it with a team, and they get their ass whooped, and they emerge a fucking savage, and then they have that mentality for life. This is why I love when you watch these guys don't just slip back and become lazy. They've instilled this in their character. They can now apply that to business. They can apply it to achieving any goal. So men, when they get this foundation first, man, like there's unlimited possibilities. But if you have unlimited possibilities with your mind, with like an effeminate attitude, it's going to stay a fantasy.
Because you only have that ability to get stuff done or follow through, be consistent.
Follow through,
with
be
building the
consistent.
habits.
Yeah.
I love what you said about habits. You said you build your habits and your habits build you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. If you think about it from another perspective, it's like you don't get your dream. You know, you build your habits, and your habits get you your dream. And it's so obvious when you think about it. You surround yourself with 5 millionaires, you become the 6 kind of thing, right? It's called ontological design. You design your space designs you. You design what's on your iPhone, that iPhone designs you back. We design religions, those religions design us. So everything is a constant feedback loop between our mind, body, and physical environment. And when you know that, that means you really start to design things ahead of time. The philosophy of the samurai warrior was win beforehand. They would practice each step of the battle before it happened, so they would know all of the different scenarios that could happen, so they'd already won, where the other person came in with guys came in with one perspective. You know? That's impossible. How do you beat a chess player who's 5 steps ahead? So with habits and with setting things up as a man, we have to strategize in terms of like, how are we going to strategize, reverse engineer, use our intellect, but then we have to have the resilience and resolve and habits and things in place where we follow through. So there's not one or the other, but I think that this is one of the sides that is an issue. There's either 2 types of men, the one who learns everything through like dumb action and trial and error. I did a lot of that when I was younger. And then there's the one who overlearns and studies everything and is a brilliant intellectual and can't speak and do a handshake, you know? It's like, how do you bring those 2 things together? So there's a scene in the movie Waking Life. I don't know if you've seen this movie.
I haven't seen it.
Great movie. Got a lot of awards. It's about somebody who's stuck in a dream, and it's kind of like a cartoony movie. It's so damn good, though. It's a philosophical mindfuck. And in it, there's these guys walking down the street, and they're all highly academic guys, genius. Like, you can't even understand what they're saying. It's too smart. And they're super egotistical, you know? You can tell. They're so smart about everything. Mm-hmm. And then they get to the end of the road, and there's this old man, and he's on top of a telephone pole. They're like, what are you doing up there? And he's like, I don't know. And the guy's like, oh, stupid old man. And then his friend looks to him, he says, he's no better than us. He's all action and no theory. We're all theory and no action, you know? And it was a perfect metaphor. It's like, this guy's just randomly up a telephone pole. They're just talking about stuff, doing nothing, you know? What? Either way, nothing gets done. So a lot of people will end up in bad situations in terms of like in prison or whatever, because they make stupid decisions because they didn't think about the consequences. And then there's other people who end up with inside of a mental prison their whole life, and it's a lifelong sentence, overthinking about everything and never doing anything, you know? So you have to break one of those. If you're on one side with too much action and you don't read enough, you got to start to bring some philosophy and some science into your life. If you're on the other side and you're all academic, you got to bring some courage and action into your life. You got to get into the boxing gym and get punched in the face a couple times and start to learn, like, I need to get into my body, I need to get out there, because most of overlearning just stems from fear. You want to like know all the things in the future that are going to happen so you don't make mistakes. This is the academic who always wants to get the A on a test, you know? Entrepreneurship is about like battling through, overcoming. It doesn't exist where you don't go through every single day something that goes wrong.
And that's like, it's funny because Ty Lopez, he does Muay Thai, right? I know you do Muay Thai as well. And he was sharing his thoughts on sparring, because someone asked him, why don't you spar?
Yeah.
And he's like, I got to do business. I can't afford to get punched in the head. So like, it's interesting you bring up that about, you know, like fighting and stuff, getting punched in the face. Like, do you think that's necessary for most men to experience, or?
I think we should all fight, but not when you're Thai. Like, I'm not saying everybody at every time should fight. I just think you need to learn to like overcome that. You need to get that primal, that you need to bring that out of you. You need to know that you're dangerous.
Agreed.
And this is why I love jiu-jitsu. Like, man, I'm Muay Thai. If a jiu-jitsu guy grabs me right now, even though I have some wrestling background. But if he's really good, he's gonna, I'm out. You know, he's gonna choke me out, and I'm dead. You know, and that's not a good thing to know. Jiu-jitsu is one of the things that I've wanted to pick up. But I really believe the way Jordan Peterson says this is like, you need to become a monster, like fucking dangerous, and learn how to restrain yourself and do good. Because you can't do good if you're not dangerous. You're just nice. You're just like impotent. That's not being good. You just don't have the ability to do anything bad.
Right.
It's much better if you actually could do serious psychological damage to someone if you wanted to, fuck up their brain, and choose to use that superpower to wake them up. That's good action. It's much better to use your physical abilities if it's necessary in a certain moment to help somebody, you know? But it's really important to get into that competition as a man. I really like jiu-jitsu is a great example. Like, just get in there and fight with somebody in some way. Like, get your mind working, get your body working, get that feeling of like, man, I could get choked out right now, and overcoming it.
Yeah.
Play that human chess.
Yeah.
There's so many metaphors in combat, and I think we're in a time where it's needed more than ever. Not because we just need to fight back against like the tyranny. That's one piece of it, but mainly it's just men are not happy. I've seen it over and over again when men are too complacent and too comfortable, and I can push their buttons so easy and get them emotionally upset so easy. I'm like, man, your lack of resilience is like kind of sickening. It makes me sad for you.
Yeah.
Because I wish that they didn't give a fuck what I said. Like, sometimes I test someone just to see if I can push them there, and then I'm like, damn, I can't work with this person. Like, they're too easy to trigger. Like,
right.
I can't trust that person anymore. They're never going to tell me the truth about myself because they're going to be too scared of confrontation.
Yes.
They're always going to be lying to themselves and to others in order to be nice. And that person is very untrustworthy. The person who gets into the fight, like Fight Club was about this, you know? It was about the caged masculinity, and they had to release it. And they were sick of it, and they felt it, and they knew there was something wrong, and they're like, I gotta release this. Yeah. And I love that one scene in Fight Club where he brings out the store clerk, and he puts the gun to his head, and he's like, what do you want to be in your life? He's like, a veterinarian. He's like basically about to kill him. And then he's like, hey, basically the guy really thought I'm about to die. And he's like, I can't do it. And then he's finally like, okay, I'm going to do it. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to check on you in 2 months, and if you're not on the way to becoming a veterinarian, you're going to be dead. And to the average person looking at that, it's like, what a piece of shit, this guy. Why would you ever do that to a human being? And then Edward Norton character says, like, why would you do that? What the fuck? And he's like, tomorrow's going to be the best breakfast he's ever tasted in his life. He just freed him. When we're having those near-death experiences or where everything's about to take in, now we're in bonus time. Fuck all your excuses now, you know? So now that guy can wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a veterinarian. What do I have to lose? I'm either dead or I'm a vet. And then within 2 months, he's going to feel fucking great. And I'm not saying we have to go to these extreme examples to do something like that, but the principle remains. The principle doesn't change. That's what I love. I love that.
Yeah, that's really powerful concepts that we're talking about, and I hope people are taking a lot of value away from what you're saying, because you're just dropping knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb. So one of the things I wanted to touch on is your background in marketing, because that, for me, that's like, marketing is such a huge part of like being an entrepreneur. Like, you have to learn sales and marketing. That's like the most important thing in a business. And you were doing 3 million a year, was it? The
first e-com that I did 3 million its first year.
Yeah.
And like almost 100,000 customers.
Wow. So what was that experience like for you, like growing that? Does marketing come easy to you when you started learning it? No, copywriting, all this stuff, knowing what people want?
I have such an obsessive personality type.
Yeah.
And when I started learning marketing, I had no interest in marketing or whatever, but personal development I became obsessed with. And then I just kept, whatever the vehicle was at the time that I thought associated with freedom is what I went to. So you start to learn, okay, you need marketing, you need sales, you need whatever. And I would then become obsessed with whatever that was at that time. So that became marketing. But it was like 4 years until this first e-com success. Before that, it was failure after failure. You know, like going from the first thing that I did, making some money, but I was so naive at the time that it was like an affiliate marketing thing, and then the guy just stole everybody's money, and then I was completely broke, and I got evicted, and my girlfriend left me, and it was like just a fucked up time. And it went from me thinking, man, this is so easy, I can do that, because I just followed. I met the Cesar Rodriguez, and this is something that if anybody wants a lot of value on how to like reach people and think in a different way. After I learned from this guy, I took out my camera and I filmed the video testimonial for him, and I found his email and I sent it to him saying, with a headline like life-changing testimonial. And he responded with a big email saying, here's my personal number, call me. And he had like 150,000 YouTube subscribers. And then he says to me, he's like, I remember like, he's like, you know, people don't do that, right? I'm like, what? Doesn't everyone just give you a testimonial after watching their videos? He's like, no, like you have to ask people. It's like, how many times have you actually gotten a testimonial from someone that you don't, like, hey bro, you mind giving me a testimonial because you got such good results? But nobody wants to just give, not nobody, but most people don't want to just give value out of the just thought, I want to give this person value. You have to hunt people down for these things. So he was like, man, there's something. I was in a suit, I was dressed up, I was like, even though it was weird coloring on the camera. And he was like, I want to meet this guy. Like, who does that? And I thought it was normal. So it's, again, it's one of these things. If you do this every day and you just like think about all the people that have given you so much value in your life, and you just send them testimonials like that, like life-changing, people respond. It's hilarious to think that it's that easy, but that's how low the bar is. So that's on that one side of things. With the marketing, I became completely obsessed because Cesar was teaching me a lot of stuff about internet marketing. So he became my first like online mentor. So I was following his things, like just doing what he said. And I was getting results because I was just doing what he said. I was buying these email lists. I was taking scripts that he had to like sell a certain product, and I was like copying and pasting almost, but I was just following the system, you know? But the problem was I was just following the system. I wasn't thinking anything outside. I wasn't thinking about the future. Yeah. I was just spending all my money, which then was giving return, and then it was all just like gone. But yeah, man, I became so obsessed, and copywriting to me was like one of the best pieces of personal development in the world, because you have to learn what moves people into action, what brings up emotions to want to do something, how to like tell stories, how to use metaphors. You have to learn all of this. So all of that can be used on yourself to better yourself. So this is what one of the skills that I have ingrained in me already is being able to take one thing and connect it to another thing. You know, how is this one thing you learn in music connect to sports? You know, all these, if you can learn the principles, you can apply the principles to everything. You know, so this is, when I talk about copywriting like this, most people never thought about it that way. But copywriting for personal development, because you're learning influence and persuasion, and then learning to influence and persuade yourself with the copy, is a pretty powerful concept. And to me, it was, the most powerful of all of the knowledge that I learned, because your brain is so easy to hack from the outside. We have this supercomputer that is the only thing that can allow us to get anything we want in our life. If this thing isn't working properly and somebody else is implanting false beliefs into our brain and manipulating us to do things like eat their shitty food, then we're just being bounced around like a pinball in life. But if we take control of that, and then we have the ability to direct our own mind, then our behavior follows. You know, I think about picking it up, I pick it up. What about thinking about being a millionaire? Okay, and now I have to just do the steps. I don't have to like make up some random new thing. But it's never the actual thing that's hard. It's this that's hard. We both know this. Absolutely. And it's so hard, and people are like, oh, I don't want to take another mindset course, or I don't want to listen to, like, yeah, you shouldn't be listening to any more information about, you should be doing the stuff. You should be changing your brain, not listening to how to change your brain. There's a big difference, you know? Like, you can learn all the things about changing your brain, but if you don't change how you think, it doesn't matter. Information is super irrelevant if it's not put into action. So yeah, man, this is the marketing side. It applies to everything.
Yeah, everything is marketing. And I recently finished Will Smith's book, and he said that everything is based on how you feel. So every marketing campaign's trying to get you to feel something.
Yes.
And that's an interesting thought, because I never thought about marketing like that. It's like you're trying to get them to feel a certain way, so they take a certain action.
Absolutely. This is all it is. And the only thing closing is backing up the emotions with logical reasons. Closing is like a different thing. Selling is only emotional. Mark Twain said it, there's 2 reasons a man buys something: the reason he tells his wife and the real reason, you know? And it's a great way of thinking about it, because it's the truth. All of us buy with emotion and justify with logic. So when you're selling, you have to sell the emotional feeling, and then you have to back up their buying decision with logic, so when they go home, they have a logical reason to tell their wife. So you're basically selling them emotion on why they want it, and then you're giving them ammunition to go home so they can explain themselves.
Yeah.
You know, like that's really what it is. Because people don't like to look stupid in front of others. So the only reason someone won't buy something usually is thinking about, oh, is this person going to think I was dumb for doing it? You know, this is usually the bigger reason. We don't like to think we're that simple and we're these like cavemen walking around, but we are. We are evolutionarily wired for a time that doesn't exist. We talk about it in our investment company all the time. We're living in an evolutionary mismatch. We're wired for local and linear times, tribes of 100 to 150 people for so many hundreds, thousands of generations. We were wired for certain behaviors within that local and linear environment. This is why when your eyes are tracking something, they're not tracking exponentially. You're tracking the gazelle and you know where to cut it off. But if it was leaping exponentially, you would always be wrong. For example, if we were to look 30 meters and we were to take 31 meter steps linear, we could see exactly where that is, pretty close. If we took 31 meter steps exponentially, after 30, we would get to over 1 billion and 26.5 times around the world. Like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and it keeps doubling. So the numbers get so huge. Our brains aren't wired for that. But we're living in this time where technology is moving at that speed and our brain is still wired for caveman times. So everything around us is hacking into that caveman brain and is designed to hack into that caveman brain. If you think about how fucked up that is, it's like there's landmines around everywhere, like bombs just like blowing you up from all angles. So the only thing that we can do is learn how to make our brain less easy to hack, and then learn how to think in these new ways where the world is going. Or else we're just lost. It's impossible. But I like both sides. On one side, how do you develop your character and like the masculinity and the things you need to feel like a real man, like and what you want to feel like, someone who's achieving something, who has purpose, who's reliable, who gets shit done, you know, and feel the respect for yourself. And then on the other side, you need to learn about this new side of technology. How can you leverage these things? Like, how can you understand it? How can you not get left behind? How can you not be in the jungle as a man, chopping down trees only? But also, how do you use these chainsaws and these axes? You know, it's on both sides. How do you use something like this podcast and get it out to people?
Right.
But both of those things are needed.
So, how did you transition then? Like, what was it for you that made you transition from marketing your e-commerce brand into now what you're doing with Stratmont Brothers, which is your hedge fund?
So after the e-com, it was I had such a pit in my stomach. First off, I was weak. So I built this thing, but it didn't matter. I was weak as a man because I was doing it to gain freedom. And not the type of freedom that is real freedom. Real freedom to me is character. You know, is aligning your thoughts, word, and action, is like truly doing things that you know are valuable to the world. It's like living congruent, you know? when you're just doing things to make money and just marketing, even though we weren't selling a bad product, we were selling different products for the phone that you could put in your car and different stuff like this. And there are fine products, but there was nothing that I was excited about with this. And you're selling these products based off of knowing that, all these people out in the world, they need this little like thing to like be happy in life, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I would rather be on the other side of the coin, which is I want people to know they don't need any of the things and be happy with themselves, but they can still have the things too,
Exactly.
So I have nothing wrong with people having watches, cars, nothing, but if they're having it to like be a dick extension because they feel shit about themselves, then there's an issue. You need to work on this Ferrari first,
Yes.
And then have everything, whatever, because you're doing it from a different place. You don't need it. You lose it, you're fine, If someone, you see this all the time, man, with these guys who get more money and get more materials and they lose the thing and then they can't even, they're lost themselves. They're an empty vessel, There's nothing there, and it's like, man, to me that's like super sad. But I was going through this transition and I really went down more of like this spiritual path, which was doing some plant medicine, wearing a little bit of some more of the Ubudian type clothing, that's this weird stuff, but more of this mentality of trying to break free from just this system of just grind. At the time, if I were to look back at it, I was going down another layer of values and shifting my values, but I was still way off. There was still no balance or not who I wanted to be. And I want to reverse this to one thing real quick, which is a model from Claire Graves. I don't know if you've heard of this model, but Abraham Maslow has the hierarchy of needs: safety, survival, love and connection, self-esteem, self-actualization, and then when he was dying, he said transcendence was the next level, like spreading it beyond yourself. Claire Graves was before Maslow, I believe, before or after, and created a values model. And what they did was they wanted to kind of prove some of what Maslow was doing, but also wanted to see how people change their values over time and if it was predictable. So there's 8 stages. The beginning stage is when you are first born and you're completely helpless. So you're completely selfish at that time because all you want is survival, unconsciously. Then as you're growing up as a child, you say, we're a family. We're a unit, so naturally we're one, I'm one with my mom, my dad, we're a family. And then adolescence, most men go through this, women too, you go through puberty, you're like, fuck this family, I'm going to go do my own thing. You start to rebel a little bit. You become more, you want individuality. You want to be your own, you have your own posters on your wall, you're thinking different. Also this level can stay for a long time, and this is when somebody wants to be a gang member and stay more in this selfish, like success for self, but not in a developed way, like more of like I'm going to have aggression to get what I want. Then we have level 4, and this is where you go back to collectivism. And this is where most people stay in the values models, and this is when you have rules and things around, and you have the police, and you have religion, and then you accept this kind of matrix, and then you want everybody else to accept it because that's how it works. It only works if everyone buys into it. And then you have the next level where people want to break free from that, and these are when you guys who become entrepreneur and want their own freedom, and they realize, wait, I don't have to follow the system exactly like this. I can do it on my own. Yeah. This can be in a legit way, but a lot of the times, find out how to pay less taxes. Find out how to bend the rules for your own freedom. Doesn't mean it's illegal, but you're not just wanting to follow what everyone else does. Then you have the next level, and this is the holistic, where you go back into, wait, no, I shouldn't just do it for me. I need to help other people succeed. Also, this whole ecosystem in this world, like I'm doing things that are hurting the planet. You start to get to another level. And then you get to level 7, and this is the first level that starts to be able to see the other levels. And level 7 is when you realize, okay, I need to get back onto my own, and I realize that there are things that need help in this planet or whatever, but now I can actually do something about it. I've learned how the science works. I've learned how to build the business. I've learned how the ecosystem is working. how can I tie things in to make real impact, and then you're thinking about that and you're at that level, but then the 8th level is like an Elon Musk and these guys who can really build the networks, build the companies, they're truly thinking, what are the biggest challenges the world is facing for humanity, and how do I fix those challenges and build companies out of it? But the level 7 and 8 are the first levels of consciousness and values where you can look back and see all the stages you went to get to that level. When someone's at a level 4 and a level 5, the guy who's doing success for self and the person who thinks that everyone should be collectivistic and just stay within the system, they fight each other. And this person thinks that person is below them, who's going for success for self. What a rule breaker, And then this person thinks that person's a sheep, and they fight each other. And then the gang member who thinks they just does what they want and they think they're wrong. And then the person who's like skipped level 5, who's like more of the hippie and holistic and everything should be vegan, hates the success for self person. And they're all in different stages of values, but none of them can see that they're just at different levels. So it's just a unconscious, it's my way, this is the best way, dogmatic thinking. But once you get to those higher levels, it's the first time you can see, okay, that person's at that stage. That doesn't mean they're there forever. They can rise up to another stage. I can speak to them at their level, because you're understanding. You have more wisdom, more way of being able to see it. It's very powerful to be able to see this because it stops it stops your misunderstanding of why things are happening around you, of why people are fighting, of why people are going to war, of why Republicans are mad at Democrats, of blah, 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 blah. Like, you'd really just start to see where people are at and why they're mad at each other, and realizing that they don't understand that that's why they're mad. So it's not really their fault. They just think the other person is wrong.
Absolutely. And when you understand the other person, I think for me personally, when there's understanding, like I understand why people do what they do. So then now the judgment has been dropped. Like, there's just love there. It's like, I have compassion for that person, because if I was them, I'd probably do the same thing. Yeah. So I understand why they're doing it, It's a beautiful place to get to, and I'm on both sides. Like, I have the understanding, but it also like brings in more impatience, and it's on both sides. I have the compassion, but sometimes I have the fire of like snap the fuck out of it, right. Yeah.
So it's on, but I try my best to try to gain understanding no matter what. But the reason I told this story is because we're talking about Stratmont Brothers. This was the next stage of evolution. So think about it. I was at number 5, success for self. How do I just make money on the internet, Learn copy, learn how to like put persuasive words and images together to get people to buy stuff, Then I went into the more spiritual, this world, like, there needs to be more love. I need to connect with something deeper, blah, blah, blah. And this whole time through the whole thing, I've been learning psychology, philosophy, like stuff from spiritual books, business, politics, like anything that I could figure. So I started to see the world in such a clearer perspective. And it was hard at first, like really hard, because some of it you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the world works that way. Like those reality checks are sometimes super harsh, because there's some dark shit that happens in this world. But there's also unbelievably beautiful things. And one can't exist without the other. So you get to a place of neutrality. And neutrality is when you're not a pessimist or an optimist. You can be either on whenever the situation, But you just realize that it is what it is. And I'm not out of nowhere going to change the way the universe operates. That is impossible. So I can either check out of this life if I can't take it, just end it, or I can learn to cope with it in neutrality and be just understanding that this is how reality works. And then from that place, I feel like you have power, because then you say, what is the highest good that I can do, while also realizing I can't change everything. So realize on one side, we're all victims. We're all bound to these laws of the universe, and we're here.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do about that. On the other side, we have free will here. Some people can argue that and say, well, the neuroscience says that your subconscious makes the decisions, blah, blah. I think it's a very empowering belief to have, or unempowering. because I believe you can speed up the feedback loop so quick that you can be at least very close to conscious and free, you know? Whether it's perfect or not, at least you're not just following your emotions for every single decision. You can rationalize and like focus on it, because most people, what they do is we take an action and then 20 minutes later we backwards rationalize why we did it, you know? But instead, what if you could do that hyper fast? Like basically go through 100 decisions in a second to make a better decision. So leading to Stratmont Brothers, yeah, man, I started to realize, what are the two big things? Number one, raising consciousness on the planet through education, especially childhood education, and just in general. The more people who have that ability to reach those higher levels, the better it is for the planet. We'll create better systems, we'll create better realities. Yep. Number two, how do you allocate capital towards creating better systems? So capital is power right now in this world, and it will be. Like there's always going to be something that is exchanged for something. Unfortunately, we're going through a time where people have been trained to believe that capitalism is the problem, especially free market, when really most of the problems come from government policies, you know, and the lack of free market in many of the cases. There's always a balance. There can be a balance of socialism and capitalism, but not one is good or not one is good. Like there's always nuance in everything. But I just realized, like, if I'm going to play bigger, especially when this happened in 2020, and I could see through so much of this from the beginning of where it was going to go. I posted about all the things that are being talked about. The science has changed now, back then, and people were blocking me, freaking out. And now it was misinformation then, and now it's like just known from everybody, you know? So I was standing in truth at the beginning of this. Same with our friend like Joel Brown. Like I always we talk about it all the time. I just asked myself, okay, this world's going in this direction. I am not gonna sit back. It's like I watched the movie Braveheart like many times, and it's like when William Wallace is sitting there, he's willing to die for freedom. And that speech he gives, he's like, yeah, you can leave today and not die, but lying in your beds later in life, will you have been willing to give, you know, everything for one chance to actually feel freedom? Would you be willing to do that? And so many people are like throwing away their freedom right now because they don't know what it's like to not have freedom. That's how the cycles work, you know, the hard time cycles. Once they have the freedom and they've grown up with only freedom, they don't know that it's possible not to have that freedom. That's a scary place to be, that comfort and thinking that the government would never make you not free. They can't see that. So they just think the government has their best interests, and that's how the takeover happens. So yeah, we are in interesting times, man. So we focus on a lot of like decentralization and a lot of things that are just giving power back to the people, from DeFi and different projects that are revolutionizing the entire financial system. If you really think of it like this, just think about it. All of these things are incredible if they're used properly. But there's still, most of it, still a centralized power is controlling everything. And now we're really starting to realize it from our social media. Things are being censored. But technology is a deflationary force, and I want to go into this real quick because this is really why I'm doing what I'm doing. Technology is a deflationary force. The evolutionary process of technology, it gets better and cheaper. Better and cheaper, better and cheaper, better and cheaper. The financial system is an inflationary force. They print more of it because it's fake, it doesn't exist, and that means your dollars in your hands are worth less. And a centralized power can choose to do it at any time. And when they print all of that new money that never got produced from real production, nobody did anything to make that money, it just got printed out of nothing, and it just made everybody else's value less, that means everything around us costs more. So this is how you enslave people. The financial system is genius. This is why Henry Ford said, you know, if people knew what the financial system really was, there'd be a revolution by tomorrow morning. He's like, it's a good thing they don't know, because it's set up to rob the average person. From the foundation of it, that's what it's set up for. So
How? For people watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard money that is real and scarce, you can't create more of it. So when you exchange goods, you exchange for what both people have. If you can create money out of nothing, which in 1971, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, that meant it wasn't backed by gold anymore. So banks didn't have to have any reserves. So that means they can give out as much money and the Federal Reserve can keep, but what produced that money? Mm-hmm. It's paper. It's no more valuable than paper. If I have two bills, one is a $1 bill, one's a 100, what's the difference intrinsically? Zero, right? Mm-hmm. It's just the symbols that are different. So there's no value in fiat money. Mm-hmm. Doesn't exist. Yeah. It only exists in our minds and based off of the symbols and based off of the trust. Mm-hmm. So if somebody gets to that point and then bankers are like, okay, we can just print more of it. They can print as much of that they want for anything that they want to print it for. Well, your money just becomes worth less. And then you're working a job and out of nowhere, that job is giving you less money because they can't keep up with the amount of pricing everything else is costing. So your housing goes up, your food goes up, and now you're really enslaved. And the only way you can get out of that system is by getting super rich and having more assets. Do most people have lots of assets? No. So the rich, when they print more money, their assets inflate, they get richer. The poor and middle class get poorer. But everybody is richer than a king was 100 years ago because we have this. Like a king 100 years ago would be jealous of what the average person has access today because of technology. If you really think about it from that level. This is like more powerful than the supercomputer that put man on the moon. And everybody has them now, you know, in all these different countries. So technology is a freeing force. It's a deflationary force. It helps people. The financial system is an enslavement force. Mm-hmm. And it's purposefully set up that way. And people don't want to hear this, but why are we never taught about this stuff in school? Why is it purposefully hid from us, you know, if it wasn't that way? No, it's a genius system. So there's these two forces fighting each other. One is trying to give people more for less. One is trying to give people less for more, you know? So you have on both sides, and if you really start to get it, you realize, okay, this is why Bitcoin was created. Bitcoin is a decentralized, trustless, permissionless, peer-to-peer network that has a specific supply that can never be created more of. So, and it can be transferred anywhere in the world basically instantly. So now you have a place where you can store your value and no one can print more of it. This is called hard money. So there's like money cycles, and it always starts with hard money and always ends with fiat money, and then it always goes back to a hard money again because the money becomes useless and valueless eventually. So something like Bitcoin is this store of value. Was the first time in history we had something that was like that. Because even gold, we keep taking more of it out of the ground. In the next 15, 20 years, Elon will mine an asteroid and we'll have like unlimited amounts of gold. So it's the first thing that is actually its own store of value. And if you really think about the power of that, and then you were to think about what's really happening in the world, in my personal knowingness is why this is being sped up to enslave people faster and control people faster is because they know these forces are coming to free humanity. And if they don't get enough people controlled first, the power will shift. And this is what I'm fighting for. So there's two sides. There's going to be the decentralized side, there's going to be the freedom side, and there's going to be the communism, socialism, complete control. On one side, you can control people in the past with army, police. These are people who have some level of humanity. And maybe you can look at them and say, bro, I'm your brother. Once you get past that, and then it's an algorithm in an AI saying, flash your vaccine card, there's no humanity anymore. It's just cold. It's just a system. It's just the matrix. So we are now designing the future. Everybody's designing the future. The less people who know about what I'm talking about right now, the more we're going to be designing the future that's going to enslave us. The more people who wake up and realize we have to build this future together and we can't allow that other future, the better, you know? Much better that way.
Mm. So the people that are seeking ultimate freedom and they're afraid of what's going to be happening in the future, they're the kind of clients that you're marketing to, right?
Yes and no. So I'll give I'm giving you a deeper perspective of why we're doing what we're doing, mm-hmm. because you can talk about investment stuff all day, but I like being on this with you because we can go more into the conceptual.
Yeah.
we are getting better returns than people are getting anywhere else. So people are going to invest for that reason, you know, because our main bulk of what we do at the hedge fund is trading. And with trading, you're trading the market, whether it's up, down, or sideways. You're shorting the market, you're going in between, and then we're rolling our profits into these world-changing technologies. So for our clients are just getting like a secure, better return than they're getting at the bank, getting from the S&P 500, you know? So our clients are happy regardless. But of course, we want clients who see what we see. And of course, they want to not only just put their money in because they want to make more money, people want to put money into impact. Like they care about that. People care about knowing that their money is going to go to something better, you know? So on the trading side isn't something better, but what we put our profits into is something better. So if people are like, okay, I can get better returns and I can know that these guys are going to put the money into things that are helping create new systems for the world, plus creating education, plus, you know? So it's on both sides.
Ah, I see. Interesting. So one of the questions that I just thought of was, how did the kid that didn't think school was for him go from that to now creating a hedge fund? Like, what's the story behind creating this hedge fund? Like, how do you do that? What, hedge fund? Like, yeah. I got friends from the marketing world hitting me up because when I went to visit you recently, they're like, yo, that guy's got a sick house, man. Like, that guy's living in a fucking mansion. Like, I love the branding. Like, hedge fund. Like, all the like wealthiest people in my network hit me up after I went to your house, and they're like really interested in how this like internet marketer guy now is creating a hedge fund. You know, it's a cool story.
No, I appreciate that a lot, and it's funny because I remember before I came to Bali, I'm sure you had different feelings. It was so like far away, you know? Like, oh, I can live like on that island. I dreamt about it so many times. Like that's like, and when I got here, it was such a feeling like, I can't believe I did it. Like I almost felt like I was getting away with something, you know? Wait, I can live here? Yeah. You know? And eventually, I love this mentality that Conor McGregor had after his fight with Chad Mendes. It was one of the fights. It might not have been exactly that one he said this, but in that fight, he was like, they were asking, man, how did you win this fight? Like, he was wrestling you, he was beating you up. He's like, man, I already visualized in my mind that he was going to do that and beat me up, and I was going to get up and beat him. So his law of attraction is, yeah, I know the challenges are going to come, but I'm going to overcome them. But he said something so valuable at one point where he said, man, well, what does it feel like being up there right now? And he's like, normal. I saw this so many times in my mind, like, you know, it wasn't surprising to him. So I think my mind has changed a lot, where I'm no longer like a giddy schoolgirl about getting results or doing something. And because I think now things are normal, that yeah, of course, whatever it is, like if it's rocket ships, I just believe that I can assemble the people and do it, you know? The hedge fund I would have never done, but I have 3 really good friends, and it came between all 3 of us, all with different strengths and gifts, and all at the beginning, before the pandemic, we were friends, but at the beginning we were like, we just realized we have to do this. And everyone has different skills, like our chairman, Kevin, he's just a genius with all the structures around the world and how everything works. Like it's crazy how he can understand this. And then from a legal side, he's just a genius with setting up global systems and structures. And then we have Axel, who's like a CEO, who's just genius with setting up the systems and structures within the business and the processes. And then we have Lorenzo, who's just such a genius mind when it comes down to unconventional thinking and ways to create different leverage and ways to like do things that, when he built one of his ecom businesses, he had like 3 employees doing like $500K a month or something at one point, you know? And how is that possible? He's doing as much money as some of these that have like 100 employees. So completely genius on that side. And then my brain is on this macro perspective, seeing the world from so many perspectives, and then also bringing that within the company and bringing that out of people. And it's synergy. And one thing that people ask me is, how did you create those type of people around you? And that's a message I get a lot on Instagram, like, because I realize that's actually people's biggest dream, is not like some cold achievement. It's like they want to get somewhere where they're around people they want to be around all the time. That's not how they envision in their mind their goals, but that's why they want the 10K a month. That's why they, you know, most of the time they want to be around the environment they want to be around most of the time. So, but they'll ask me this, and people think that the answer needs to be some step-by-step process. But the actual answer is to reverse engineer who you have to become to automatically attract those type of people. So what character do you have to be so those people will want to be around you? Like, how do you become very valuable to other people because they're like, yeah, that's the perfect person that I want to resonate with and learn from. And, you know, if you do that, then everything becomes more resistance free. But if the other angle is you just want to like meet the people and them to be friends with you, this is like a needy mentality. This is like wanting something from nothing again. And a lot of people are stuck in this. So it's like people always want the thing without doing the thing. And it always comes back to that. We all do. We all want the $1 million right now. We all want the best-selling book right now. You know, we all want that now. But the more you train yourself to actually not want it now and to want to be the person that gets it, and that's like the goal, I'm going to just be the person who gets it because then I deserve it and it's going to happen automatically. It's just a way better. You have to still like know what you want, have that vision, but then get that away. You keep that in your mind all the time, like know it's there, but get that away and get your head down and be the person, you know, every day.
Absolutely. And it's just like this podcast for me, like that's exactly how I feel. And before I was so attached to the outcome that I would just stop because I'm like, the outcome is so far away.
Yeah.
And that's actually most of life is spent doing the process.
Yes.
So if I'm not enjoying the process, I'm never going to get the outcome anyway. So it's like, and I've learned this with jiu-jitsu. I was thinking about this the other day. Like the first 6 months of jiu-jitsu, like you're just getting smashed. Like you're just like unconsciously incompetent. Like you don't even, like you just suck. Yeah. You know? And then after the first 6 months, that's when you start like picking up stuff and you're like, oh, I'm learning how to do this now. I can do this. Oh wow, I got this person and that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then things start clicking. But the first 6 months, now I've done jiu-jitsu, anything else I do in the future, I'm going to have that reference point now. So like, all right, the first 6 months of anything new that I try, I'm going to suck and just accept that and embrace it and just keep going.
Yeah.
It's like start and keep going.
Yeah.
You know?
You said something good in your story the other day that you were like imagining if you had $1 billion.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, it's so damn true because I think it was the Rolling Stones. I forgot the name of Mick Jagger. Is it? I don't know. And they asked like, if we gave you $1 million, like, would you stop playing music? You know? And he's like, no, like, because then we wouldn't be doing the thing we love. And it's like the money doesn't mean what the money means to someone else when you're doing what you love. You know, because money is fucking paper. It buys you things. It can create freedom. There's all sorts of stuff money can do in this system that we've created. But a goal to have money in general is an empty, stupid goal. What is that day in, day out life that you want to live? What is that character that you want to become? You know, like who is that person? What deep inside is driving you? Because that's what you're going to do every day.
Yep.
And then you get to be present in the moment, knowing that you're spending your life doing stuff that you love to do. That doesn't mean things don't get fucking hard. That doesn't mean sometimes you have to be super unconsciously incompetent for a while at something to get better at it. And I believe everyone should be doing at least one thing in their life all the time that they suck at so they can get better, you know?
Yeah.
And always stay adaptable. But overall, like that mentality of, you're doing jiu-jitsu already. You're meeting with the people. You're doing this podcast. Like, if you had an extra $500 billion, your life wouldn't be that much happier, maybe a tiny bit. But it wouldn't be that much better just from that extra money.
Yep.
There's levels of happiness that you can get with money. When you go from zero money to 100 grand, you're going to have a big gain in happiness, most likely, depending on where you're living. Because you're not going to be worried about things. You're not going to be stressed. You're going to have food that's healthier if you want, you know? That will probably create more happiness. If you go from 10 million to 100 million, do you think there's going to be much more happiness? There might be actually less happiness because maybe how you're doing it is causing you to like be more stressed in some way, you know? So you don't know the balance.
Or to become a prisoner of your money, which is a common one.
Super common. And that's the thing, like I know money doesn't imprison me, like at this point. I can like know that if I have a very nice motorcycle, a nice watch, I know that I am totally fine if it's gone. And that's because of all the time spent in more of the spiritual side of things. You focus more on you as a Ferrari, you know, on the food you put in your body, on the people you surround yourself with, on your day-to-day actions, and much less on how can I impress another person by pulling up in a certain car, you know? But I have nothing wrong with those things at the same time. And that's what I always want to like flip. That doesn't mean I don't think some of those things are absolutely fascinating and I don't like them. It's just that they don't control my behavior. My behavior and my money is more controlled with how do I invest this money into other things that are going to make more money, but in a way that I know is doing better. Because I believe when you invest, you should make more money if you're putting it to good, because then you can do even more good. Like this should be the mentality. Money should be a multiplier. Like in my belief, I don't need a fucking yacht. But I need to be able to multiply my impact more. Like that's something that I desire inside. So I always think if I know a really good person, I want them to have more money, you know, who's gone through this type of mentality. Like I want that person to have more money because they're going to do more good with it. Like this is a way of seeing it.
And the opposite is also true. Like if they're an arsehole, they're going to be an even bigger arsehole.
For sure, man. Like there are people who would love to like control the water supply, so you have to buy your like water no matter where you go.
Yeah.
There are people who think that way. So this is the interesting and sad part about life as well. There's so many different personalities with so many different perspectives, and the people who are really intelligent without empathy, like more psychopathic and sociopathic, are very good at setting up systems and treating human like cattle. Like they're good at it. The people who I've met who are super nice and kind and compassionate and want to help people are really bad at that stuff. So they have a hard time selling, a hard time creating. They think manipulation is evil, you know, and manipulation is evil if you do it for bad, but the word manipulation just means to change something. So if I can manipulate someone into believing in themselves and they get better results, was that bad? You know, it's neutral.
Yes.
Fire can cook your food or burn someone alive, like double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to help those people who are super good-hearted learn a lot of these principles, because then they have more power to go out in the world with, but they're a lot of times the ones most resistant to it. Whereas the psychopathic achievers, competitive people, like you don't have to motivate them. They want to dominate. They want to gain power. It's in them, like they love it. So this is the hard position that we're in. And then you get guys like Elon Musk who are like, you know, an alien who for some reason was born with this desire to want to like do things good for humanity. And some people will say, well, he's also doing bad things with Neuralink, putting like chips in people's brain. I agree with this as well to some level, but I also understand where he's coming from, because his belief is it's happening no matter what. He wants to at least be ahead of it. Like this is his mentality. He wants He wants control over these things because he thinks if he doesn't have control over it, then everyone will be enslaved. So yeah, he is doing things that could do the same thing, but I do believe he's coming from a place of trying to help personally.
Yeah. And so that brings up the question of who inspires you. I've heard you mention Elon Musk a few times. You've mentioned Warren Buffett. Like who's the guy that, when I ask that question, who's the guy that comes to mind?
I would say right now, a guy who inspires me a lot is Jordan Peterson. Super big fan of what he has done. Not everything he talks about and everything he does, like anyone, but I love how he's really a zeitgeist to the time, like a guy that's the spirit of the times for men, and talking about the conversation between personal responsibility and meaning for men, and how important that is. And this is what a lot of the things that we're talking about in Habit Accelerator and other things as well, because what he is saying is that deep pit in the gut of men that they feel, and no one was able to articulate it until they found his videos. And then he spoke to that part inside them and made them feel understood finally. And in marketing, we say like you have to enter into the conversation going on in their head, and then you have rapport, and then you can lead them or explain someone's problem better than they can, and they'll unconsciously believe that you have the answer. This is like marketing, like wisdom. And he has been able to do that with millions of men and put in so much work for so many years as a clinical psychologist to understand people, but also read all the dark psychology, the dark philosophy from Carl Jung and these guys who are trying to see reality for what it is.
Yeah.
And not scared to go in there and slay the dragon, you know? He's willing to go in there. And he feels called that he has to do it. And he's not actually he's not a very confrontational person, but he seems like it. But that's what happens when you want to fight for something. You have to do it whether you like it or not. I like that mentality. And I love the way he is able to articulate things. That's such an incredibly precise way. When he did the interview with Kathy Newman, and I don't know if you saw this interview with Kathy Newman, but he was getting ripped apart for this thing that happened that he said about like the transgender community, which wasn't a transphobic attack at all. All he was saying is, I don't believe that the government should be able to dictate our speech, meaning like censor us and tell us what we have to say. So for the pronouns, they were basically, the Canadian government was talking about making it law that you had to say their pronoun to them. And he's like, I'm against anything that's against free speech. And the governments always try to use things that make it seem like they're kind to a minority, you know? In order to do the first domino of taking away free speech. And he saw that because he studied so much of this in history. So he's on Kathy Newman, and she's trying to make him seem like he's a racist and a this and that. And then she says, like, how does your right to say what you want to trans people trump their right to being offended, you know? And he's like, well, it's a good question. It's like, kind of like, how you're doing it to me right now, your right to say what you want and offend me is certainly okay to you, you know? And then he's like, how he explained it was so important. He's like, in order to be able to think and rationalize, you have to risk being offensive. Like, that's so powerful, man. Yeah. Like, in order to just say what you think to be true, you have to risk being offensive. Because someone will be offended by no matter what you do. Yep. Which is crazy if you think about it. So I love how he is able to bring up those epiphany moments in these high fire situations where someone's trying to attack him with all of the petty shit, which almost all of us get destroyed by. Dave Chappelle, Joe Rogan, you know, like everyone's getting destroyed by this stuff. And Jordan just sits there in the line of fire and shifts it. And she's like, deer in the headlights, and then 60 million views later and like all these comments, she basically like doesn't have a job, you know? And it's not like, it's not for any reason except for the fact that she was doing something extremely manipulative. And he called it out, not in an evil way, but it's just like when people see that level of unfairness and attack because someone's able to articulate it in a way to get you to have that epiphany, those are really powerful people in the world for good.
Yeah. And he was aware of that. So
super aware of it.
she thought maybe he wasn't aware of it.
She thought the interview was going to go in the way where he was just going to have his character assassinated, and then she was going to get all these views of assassinating Jordan Peterson. TV host annihilates Jordan Peterson, you know, like this type of thing. And it just like complete 180 shift, and it just ruined her career. And I don't want people's careers to be ruined. But I don't want people to be getting away with this type of manipulation to good-hearted people and just assassinating their character when you fully know that that's not actually who they are. Just to push agendas and to get views.
It's happening a lot right now, though. I had a question that I think we can end on this. It's like, how I know one of the things that you talk about and you're passionate about is building generational wealth. So give us like an overview. I know it's a loaded question, but like what are like the key things that people should be looking at to create this generational wealth?
So in all of the times in history, it's always good to study history to get at least more clarity on what used to happen.
So we're going through a time right now. I made a post about this today with Russia invading Ukraine, right? And if you saw what happened earlier this month, Joe Biden in the U.S. Froze $7 billion in Afghanistan from the bank, and basically stole their money, because they can. In the Canadian system, they're stealing people's money who have different political views, who donated to a freedom convoy.
Right.
Even if it was one of the women, a single mother who donated $50 at the very beginning and nothing was illegal. Like, what are you talking about? Freeze her account. Like, this is crazy stuff. This has happened so many times in history. And the wealthy are always fine. Why? Because the wealthy can move. The wealthy can put their money in Switzerland. The wealthy can create different systems. There's always loopholes. And this is the sad part about the world that we live in. There are always ways to keep your money safe. There are always ways to store value. And there are always ways not to. And if you're stuck within the system, you have less options. The point of trying to gain freedom and gain wealth is so you have more options. Like, this is it. And unfortunately, it will just never happen for everybody. And that's not a good or a bad thing at the same time, because it's the same thing. Not everyone will win the championship in sports. And I think that's a good thing. If everyone just got the first place prize, then nobody is incentivized to win. And then also nobody learned the lessons of losing. I love, the losing is great. Like, when you lose and you get that motivation to not lose, I think that's a great experience to recover from. So we have to learn from the losses of people in history. One of the ways of losing is to have no options. So the world is going to keep changing, keep evolving. It's going to be the most adaptable to change is going to thrive. So we have to start to think about this ahead. If you look at places right now, like where we have a lot of things set up in Singapore and other places, a lot of people are moving to places like Dubai. Why? Because they're offering more freedom for those type of people. And then people are like, yeah, but I'm not rich, I can't do it. That's the first step, all right? The first step is, how do you increase your wealth? How do you increase your money? So then you can even have this conversation. From there, you need to be connected with the right people. And those people have to be able to show you their systems and what's working. It's not an overly complicated thing. But the problem I think that people have is, and all of us have, at the beginning, we just don't know what we don't know. And if we don't know what we don't know, we just keep things not knowing the patterns of history. And I can promise everybody on this call, or on this podcast, we are going to see it over these next years, the amount of confiscation of wealth that's going to happen, the amount of freezing of bank accounts for dissenting opinions. Having a political belief on this side, okay, bank account frozen, Oh, you did this? Oh, you're a terrorist. You're a Trump supporter? You're a terrorist. Bank account frozen. And the Western world is going to get hammered. So one of the things to think about in general is to start to figure out how you can move your money and move your value and move the things that you have into places that are going to be more friendly to you, and not exploit your political beliefs. Because it's going to come. It's just the historical patterns. It's inevitable. So for generational wealth, think about it in terms of assets and creating assets. But I think the best wealth you can give anybody is like who you were. Imagine your son knew who you were. Like, it makes me like tear up, That was my father, Like, how much great feeling is he going to have of life knowing who his father was and the chance of him knowing that he has that inside of him, versus like your child being born into a bunch of money, but his dad was a loser, Like, you don't want to just give somebody generational like money. You want to give wealth. Wealth is your family, your bloodline, the books that you left, the content that you left, the things that you achieved. You climbed Mount Everest, all of these types of things, what you overcome, the stories, who you helped. Because leaving them just money itself is like almost guaranteed they will lose it. But leaving them legacy and network and respect on your name, and like, this is like, that's wealth. Money comes and goes, But that stuff is like goes down in history, you know.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Like thinking about that, the concept of leaving wealth behind and what you define as wealth.
Yeah.
Like the impact.
Yeah, I don't really want to have my kids just have like a ton of money.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Because even like Warren Buffett, he didn't just give his kids all this money.
Yeah.
I believe in that concept. I believe much more in instilling principles. You know, but of course you want to have some things set up because at any point in time you can be gone. But I think it's still better to have in place your network. Like know that you have close friends that you've built that would die for you, would do anything to make sure your kids are going to be taken care of and raised in the way that you guys have talked about values and whatever. Like that's beautiful because and not every child are going to be like you. Maybe they have no interest in doing what you're doing or whatever. So you do want to have like some safety nets for sure. This is what I would also call wealth because maybe they're born with a mental illness. Maybe there's all sorts of stuff. So yeah, of course you want them to be taken care of. But on average overall, you just have to think about how you can make sure that child gets to like live a life where they get to reach their potential. And what else do you want for them? Just like really nice stuff and mentally bankrupt and spiritually and morally bankrupt, or like great character and they can create what they want.
Absolutely. So do you have any last comments you want to leave with people? Any last bits of advice that you would leave people with? Because, man, you dropped some amazing knowledge here, and I'm going to watch this back and I'm going to be taking notes because this is a really, really valuable piece of content.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Man, it's always interesting to get asked a question about advice because I can give my beliefs on this podcast, but I can't give anybody advice, especially like on a podcast. Everybody's so different, which then reverses it to the advice, which would be based off what we said about like the personalities and whatever. There are two main things that I think about all the time that are like the ancient wisdom. So I love timeless wisdom. I think this is like timeless wisdom is the most beautiful because it's just the principles of how life works. For example, like design follows like golden ratios, you know, and beautiful design now or 1,000 years ago is beautiful design. Trends are trends. They come and go. They have no principle behind them a lot of the time. Just a celebrity wore a certain shirt and everybody did it for a while, you know? But principles remain, timelessness. So the first one is, we've heard it over and over again, we become what we think about most of the time. You know, it's so simple. Yeah. But what dominates your thoughts over and over again is what creates your action and behavior and your character. And if you're not constantly removing the weeds like in a garden, it just overflows. If you keep all your ideas in your brain all the time, it's like they're stuck in an attic and they get moldy. But if your thought process all the time is becoming more pure and more clean and connecting dots and living in the present while also being able to look into the future and create vision, you can do so many amazing things with your brain. But it starts with like what you're thinking about all the time. Like you become what you think about all the time. And then number 2 is know thyself. And in the movie The Matrix, there's the scene with the Oracle, and Neo walks in, and above him it says Temet Nosce, which is in Latin meaning know thyself. And this is the ancient principle. They all knew this back then. Know yourself and you will know the world. Know yourself and you will know the universe. Know the universe and you'll know yourself. And this feedback loop between like knowing these natural laws and knowing that your brain is creating a reality, but also knowing like yourself is like such a powerful combination. But if you think about what you want and then you read a book and someone says, hey, just take this action like Warren Buffett and you'll be like Warren Buffett, this is a complete lie. What if you're not anywhere close to his type of personality or intellect? Like, why are you trying to be like him? But if you do the opposite and you start knowing yourself and you start understanding your skills, and then you're like, oh, all these other guys were kind of like my personality. Let me look at their lives. Let me read their biographies. Oh man, everything this guy was going through when he was younger is exactly what I'm going through. He thinks exactly like me. Well, what did he do to get out of that? So now you're like picking your mentors based off of more who you are and who's like somebody that you can actually emulate. versus trying to emulate someone just because someone told you to read their book and do it. Like, this is a losing game. If I try to be Elon Musk, I'm fucked. You know? I have no chance in being that personality. Like, he is so, how his brain works is so sequenced. It's so physics based. Like, and I'm a first principles thinker, but I'm much more in a psychological and a conceptual level. He's very hard physics, very like exactly precision what it is. I'm very conceptual in the clouds. So I have to be able to play in that reality so I can then bring it down and have other people help me sequence it, you know? But what if I didn't know that? Then I try to do all my businesses on my own and I fail. You know, I try to take the wrong roles and I fail. Am I a failure because of that? Well, I failed, but I just didn't find out like what I should really be doing. So those two things are what I would focus my time on.
I love that, man. Like you become what you think about. That one is fucking huge, man. As a man thinker. I remember when I first met you, you were talking about that book a lot. You were reading it every day, I believe.
As a Man Thinketh?
Yeah. Was that
James
right?
Allen,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's only a 40-page book of wisdom. It's funny, hey, it's like I just go back. I would rather read the same 10 books 100 times than read 2,000 books. If I know that they're the best books, you know? But a book like, this is the cool part about the time we're living is you get so much curation from people.
Yes.
So you go to top people who have read thousands of books and they say, here are the top 10, you know? And you do that over and over and you start to see these patterns. It's like these same books keep coming up from people you super respect. Yeah. And now they're like sifting and sorting through to find the diamonds. What epic, you know? I don't have to read every single book. Most books actually are going to fuck up your brain.
Yep.
Like anyone can write a book. There's millions of books. Most of them are probably not suitable for a human being to read. Yeah. One last thing is Stephen Hawking wrote this book and he talked about how the evolution came to this point. And he was like, in a human being, you have about 100 million bits of information being born. Like information, every animal, every human, we have like innate things in us that teach us how to walk and interact and whatever, and they're just kind of built into us. A bird just flies, you know? A kangaroo just hops. Yeah. Like they just do it automatically. So we have a certain level of data that's already just within us, information. Then he's like, that same amount of information is in about like 50 books. So it's like you can double your information, what you are by reading books. So what's the limit to that? No one's ever found a limit to it. So you can keep learning your whole life. The only sad thing to me is by the time you get to like 60 and you're so wise is when you start to like, you know, people die or 80, 100. That's the only sad thing is all that wisdom disappears. Because all we can do is write it down in a book and pass it on. But then that other person gets that book and they have to spend their whole life still ingraining the wisdom. Whereas if you look at Tesla, every time one of their cars learns something, all of their cars learn something. Because it's the software. So it goes to everyone at once. That's why AI is going to get so smart so quickly. Because everything one of them learns, everybody learns at once. So you have millions of people all learning and everything that each of them are learning, they all learn. Whereas a human being doesn't have that. We can only pass on our information and then have someone else read it. It's not like the Matrix where you just plug it in and everyone gets it instantly. Knowing that, we have more responsibility than ever to be able to gain this wisdom as much as possible and then pass it on.
And knowing thyself is paramount. It's like one of the most important things.
Yeah, and it's so, I don't know why it's so rarely taught. Or people take one personality type. If you do the 16 personalities, you have a very limited perspective on who you are.
Yeah.
If you take the 16 personalities and then you layer it onto the Strength Finders 2.0, you can have two people who are both your ENTP, I believe before, ENTP and another ENTP, but both of your 5 strengths are totally different. You're totally different people that have similar ways of doing things, you know, but very different. And then you layer it on to the principles you and how you work within an organization and blah, blah, blah. Then you layer it onto your hexaco and you start to really get a more clear picture of how you can really operate. But if you do the one, it's super limited. So I try to figure out as close as possible while also trying not to box somebody in. Because the other part is you don't want to box yourself in and think, oh, I'm this personality, I can never achieve that other thing.
Yeah, that's
this
the
is
danger.
another hard part.
Yeah.
So sometimes you also have to give yourself room for exploration. You know, and you have to like plan that in, or else you stay too rigid. The Spartans were so fucking great, and there's Spartan on this book, and he talks about the Spartans in this book. And the problem with the Spartans is that they were too rigid and dogmatic. So they would fight till the death, but they couldn't expand because they wanted things their way, and they kept, oh, come, you want to come? Come fuck with us, we'll always take you out. But they didn't have a strategic enough, open enough mind and enough flexibility, because all their training and everything they did was the same for so many generations, and they were just that. So it can be a great asset, but it was also what caused their downfall. So don't be too dogmatic, but also don't be too open-minded without some values that you stick to. And life is so interesting. I always say it's like life is art and science. If you're too like scientific about life, you get like everything's kind of boring. If you're too over here, you're too floaty. It's like you can learn all these principles, that's the science, but you have to live your art of life.
It's like a blend of everything.
Yeah, and how you live is like your choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to tell anybody like what I love people's individuality and their freedom.
Yeah.
But I also want to be able to try to instill the principles that have been proven over and over again to be like what creates happiness or what creates this. And then if someone's not getting what they want, at least they'll have an idea and like a set point to why it's happening.
It's like leaning into your edge. Like what makes you? Just lean into that more and more and more. Now you're doing that. That's why you're here. So it's like, man, I just commend you on your success and your inspiration and your leadership, really. You know,
I appreciate
it,
man.
Leading the men, man.
I appreciate it because the reason it's happening is because I wasn't doing it. That's powerful, you know?
Yeah.
And this is what allows you to be more, I don't even like to use the word like have humility, because it's not humility. I'm very confident in myself. I believe in myself, but I know that I know way less than I will. So I'm nowhere close to the peak. And I think that's what humility is just knowing that you can get so much better, knowing that you could be wrong,
right?
Knowing that everything that you think could be wrong, you know, but having super confidence in where you're at, knowing you can expand more and you can find better ways.
Awesome. So Gavin, where can people find out more about you?
3 places. You could follow my Instagram. This is where I post a lot of things like for stories and some videos there. For the investment side, it's stratmontbrothers.com, and for Habit Accelerator, habitaccelerator.com. And this is for the men who really want to step up and go to war in a good way.
Awesome. So we'll end it there. And man,
thanks, you, brother.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Epic. Okay, that was
2 hours 23.